It is a good bass. Way to call him, Al. Tell me what I got on my line, buddy.
Ooh, right there, right there.
Close to the boat.
I almost seen her hit it.
Whoa.
I almost seen her go bam.
Perfect.
That cold water, 50-degree water, got her a little bit numb, Mark.
Yeah, senses are a little off.
Yeah. You know, where a bait like this really, really shines for largemouth is that cool to cold water time in spring and in fall. That's where this bait really, really comes into play, those cool, cold water transitions. You know, we're in 50 degrees now. And up on these northern lakes that I fish a lot, I've caught largemouth like this jerking in water in the high 30s. And I mean, you're dead sticking a long, long, long time with it. And another key thing where it really works is you want the water to be clear, you know, stained to clear, which usually happens if the water's getting cool. But you want to try to avoid as much as possible the real dark water environments. Jerking like this doesn't quite work as well in those kind of baits where you need something like a spinnerbait, something that makes some noise, or a crankbait pounding the bottom like a DT6, something like this, to get the fish's attention, or dragging a jig or a football head. So clear water, cold water is probably the best of the best of the best for what we're doing. Boy, that bait sat there a long time, Mark.
You know, that's one of the interesting things about the cold water period, as you were saying, Al, is that oftentimes just a lack of motion by the angler still keeps that bait in play. And I think oftentimes we just get a little apprehensive and we want to move along a little bit and move along too fast thinking it's like summer, but really the longer that bait is sitting, working through the suspension characteristics, the better off it is.
Boy, one of the things I noticed with the shadow is these it's a flat-sided bait. This is really unique. And when you see it underwater, there's so much flash, and you barely have to move the rod to fish this bait. It might sound funny, but you can almost fish it in place. And you can make the bait with the right slack line and the right feel, and you see what it's doing, you can make that bait do a 180 and keep it in cold water like this, and the colder it gets, the smaller that strike zone's gonna be. So you don't wanna fish it away from those fish. It takes a little while. That fish isn't charging like he is in 65-degree water, charging out of the weeds or off the bottom to hit a bait. You know, they're swimming real slow, they're coming up, they're looking at the bait, and they're just going, and so, I mean, you gotta really fish it slow.
I guess.
Yeah.
You know, it was one of the interesting things, as you pointed out, Al, is how flat-sided baits actually work with absence of motion sometimes, with that slight little, I gotta be careful. Ooh, this is a good one. You know, Al, with the comment you made about flat-sided baits and absence of motion, you know, we've learned a lot about anglers in other parts of the world, and it's kind of interesting. People like in Europe have fished the same rock, the same piece of structure for hundreds of years, and some families just keep going to this rock time and time again, and you watch how they're masters of just moving and twitching a bait. And flat-sided baits, we've learned so much about their movements and lack thereof. It makes really cold water situations, these baits really, really excel.
Mark, what makes the shadow wrap so much different than all of the other minnow baits that we have in the Rapala line? You
know, it's interesting, Al, when you work on projects about lures, you want to be careful not to cannibalize existing family members. And certainly in the lineup, you look at a jerkbait as a category, there's a lot of jerkbaits that are ovals or modified ovals, real round bodies, and they roll easy. They don't flash like a flat-sided bait. So characteristically, the shadow wrap, being a flat-sided bait, flashes with the least amount of movement and action. And actually what ends up happening, the shadow wrap for cold water situations, instead of being what I would call like a striding bait, which is a conventional jerk bait, you throw past your target, you ease it up to it, it can only move by so far, and then it has to suspend, slow sink, or slow rise, where the shadow wrap, you can, with barely any movement to the rod at all, or picking up slack line, you can get the bait to move left to right, and as you say with another fish, Al, get that bait to turn and do a 180. It's that responsive. I guess that is what the word I'm looking for.